Welcome to the Head Game, powered by Mindful Athlete Training. My name is Dr. Hunter Stevens, and with me today,
Dr. Lee Picariello. I'm here. I'm present. I'm back.
Welcome back. Welcome back.
Yeah, well, I took some time off. I got away. I have yet to watch the podcast in my absence in its entirety, but I've caught a few snippets. I caught young Jess talking about the pressure of the baseball player with that one opportunity, that pressure to perform, that fear of failure. And I understand you guys got into a quite bit of chaos.
Yeah, we talked
chaos
a little
came
bit.
about.
Absolutely, yeah. We definitely talked a little bit about chaos. We talked about embracing your role, how to embrace your role, but we also talked about the clutch moment. And really, that was what it was all about, is how to embrace the clutch moment. And I think we came down to clutch is being open and available to that moment. And you can only be open and available to that moment when you embrace the chaotic nature of that situation.
Embrace the suck.
Absolutely. When you embrace that chaos, and things can happen. And when you listen to next week's episode, just get past maybe the first 3 minutes. There may be some digs. Just
I'm sure there are a few.
But the young guns were in the table, and now we're back, full steam ahead and ready to go. So welcome back, those of you who are listening and watching. Welcome. Again, we are the Head Game. So today we're talking a little bit about the NBA bubble. We're going to be talking a little bit about chaos. We're going to talk about a little bit about what we're doing here also at Mindful Athlete Training and where we're moving forward. So I just wanted to start and get your thoughts on, how are you doing? How's everything going? I know in the world today, sports, it's a little bit crazy. I know you have a son dealing with that, your daughter as well. So
yes.
Kind of talk a little bit about your thoughts on, what life is like as a parent, dealing with the chaos of life, dealing with the COVID-19 situation.
Amidst the COVID chaos.
Yes.
It's a challenging role. Thanks for asking.
Mm-hmm.
It stretches you a great deal, both as a human being, as a husband, as a father. It's exhausting. Probably the most mental and physical output required. Because very often, I think what COVID has taught me as a parent is the number of things that you first thought you had a fairly decent grip on, and you would put them in the control basket, are now out the window. And without those common outlets, how many times have we talked about running our kids ragged, overscheduling them, having them in too many sports, too many extracurriculars? Well, now the opposite has taken effect. Most recently, local school districts have announced that some are staying virtual until late January. Some are going back in what's affectionately referred to as hybrid mode, which is some people in school, some people virtually, and it's a color system or it's a letter system, and you flip-flop back and forth. And I think what you really start to find out is what you value for your children, and you start to look at how their lives are sculpted every single day. And when those things are being removed and those experiences are being denied, I think the natural human reaction to observe that is to get upset, to get angry, to get obviously frustrated. So we'll see. There's a lot of waiting game throughout all of this that makes it very difficult to anticipate with any kind of clarity. The whole nature of planning, I think one thing that's become more apparent is that we are rote creatures. We like to do things the same way. In anticipation of some of our conversation points related to chaos and chaos theory. A lot of people look at statistics to human behavior and how over 90% of human behavior is actually predicted with a fair amount of certainty. We're pretty much all doing the same things.
Right.
And when we can't do them, there's a natural void. But on top of that, aside from the things that are being removed, are typical compensatory strategies, techniques, relaxation methods. They're also either denied, restricted, or not available. So then our natural course of managing stress, or to help ourselves medicate without drugs is also not available. So it's things are being removed, and our typical course of self-soothing is being denied, and that's a dangerous cocktail.
Right. So when we get this disruption, when we get this, as we were calling it, chaos today, right? How do we manage that? Right? When we expect one thing and something else is coming, is we expect 2020 to be our best year, and then we get the curveball, we get the slider, we get the change up of COVID-19. And versus science, more than science, right? Fear has been a primary aspect of that. The chaotic nature, the uncertainty of when will this end.
Yeah.
And that has caused more disruption.
It has. I would first, just to your baseball reference, I would call 2020 a knuckle curve because it's even more of that rare pitch. The changeup or the curve we know exists. I think the knuckle curve, that rare dodo-like animal that you don't really see often at all, would best encapsulate 2020 for me. But to speak to your comments about chaos and how do we actually try to prepare for that, I think that the first thing, Hunter, is that the acknowledgement that a huge adjustment not only is way past due, but now more than ever is warranted.
Yeah, and that shift, that adjustment, right, is something that we've often talked about, and we've spent, I think, many hours. We work full clinical days, and then we come back. We're in the Mindful Athlete Lab training people as well, and then we sit down for 4 hours and have conversations, 5 hours till almost 9 o'clock at night, and thinking about, well, what does that mean? How do we shift the mentality of performers? How do we train the mentality of performers? How do we train the skills that make up performance? And what we kind of came to was the notion of life is not a vacuum. And we can talk about this.
Life is not a bubble.
Life is not a bubble. And we can talk about the NBA bubble. And recently, some comments came out this past week from Jaylen Brown, a member of the Boston Celtics. And he was talking about how he traditionally, looks to basketball as an opportunity to play, to perform. But then he gets to go home. He gets to go home to his family. He gets to go home to his friends. He gets to go home to his $1 million mansion, right? And escape a little bit.
Unwind.
Free himself.
Right. Outlets.
But in the bubble.
Not an option.
Not an option.
Not an option.
He has to now see his competition everywhere he goes. He's in the pool trying to relax. There's somebody he's going to play against. He's trying to, just get a workout in. Somebody's walking past the hallway.
There's no mental respite. And I think a secondary point, which I kind of want to scribble away and make sure that I get down, is one issue is life is not a bubble.
Right.
The other issue is, why did we ever think life could be a bubble? And you think about just that ideology for a second. Clearly, it's being created in order for them to play. Right. And then we can spend hours talking about reasons why. The notion of the NBA returning to play, both the NBA and the NHL were well into their season. They very easily could have packed up shop, but they choose not to. And many could make the argument, well, that's monetary reasons. That's billions of dollars lost. So therefore, we're going to do everything that we can. We're going to create over a 100-page protocol manual. We're going to make sure that this bubble happens. But isn't it fascinating, Hunter, that nobody ever, not once, talked about the mental hurdles associated with the players that were asked to self-quarantine, in so many words,
right,
to go and continue their season. There was a little bit of concern, pushback from the Players Association about, hey, wait a minute, we have to sacrifice a great deal here. But that was more about time away from their family,
right,
not being able to see their significant others, their wives, their children. Not one specific word ever came up about mental health. So when you think about trying to get our hands wrapped around this notion of life is not a bubble, because as we all know, more now than ever, life is chaotic. Why did we ever think that we could put anything, any human entity in a bubble without pushback?
Yeah, and I'm not sure. I think maybe the thought process along that way is, they're there to perform. They get to, they're going to talk with their families. They're going to have connection. I think they get one ticket a game for someone to visit going into the playoffs. But ultimately, they don't talk about it. It's not something that's regularly addressed.
Right.
A lot of times, though, when they talk about mental health, when you discuss mental health, when you think about it, people look for escape. I need to distance myself from this moment. I need to remove myself. I need to be in a calm, secure place. I need to be in a quiet place. How often in life do we get to be in an escaped system, in a place?
We don't.
Is...
It's very, very rare. And I could make the argument the more that we push ourselves for achievement, those opportunities to put ourselves in the very space that we need to recover occur less and less and less. Why? Mm-hmm. Because, as I've said many times, the most successful people fail the most often because they're trying more. Mm-hmm. They continue to push.
Correct.
So the more that you expose yourself to the stress of life, one could make the argument, and to your point, you need time to recover. But it doesn't work out that way.
No. And recovery, I think, is an important issue. I think it's something that is addressed, and I think that is the thing that's being addressed right now. I think the majority of focus in mental health is how do people recover faster? How do they get there? And what does that look like? But not a lot of people are saying, how do you embrace that moment that you're not able to relax, that you have to be engaged, that you have to be connected with? And last week I talked about that moment in the clutch situation, and I talked about fear a little bit and what chaos kind of can bring. And I talked about there's 3 elements to it. It can either overwhelm you, be all in your face. You can either try to avoid it, escapism, or you can try to face it. You can accept it. You can acknowledge that it's there and be able to embrace it. But how many people want to embrace it? How many people live in that moment, live in the chaos, right? Accurately calm themselves to get there, live in the chaos, and then recover? Not a lot of people.
No, not a lot at all. Jaylen Brown, this is what he said. It's tough being isolated from society. This is all not one quote. This is snippets from his quote. It's impossible here in the bubble because a lot of guys want to be able to get away from basketball just a little bit. And I think it's profound. It's in his own way. He's just making it very clear that this notion of what was the primary focus? Why were people asked to engage? If you think about the irony that the bubble was first presented as the only solution that safety could be secured, it really makes a much larger statement to support your statement in society that we're not thinking about how chaos in any bubble will impact people.
You have to think about what kind of bubble are people creating for themselves.
Exactly.
How are they isolating themselves from the challenges, the distractions, the diseases of the world?
Right.
They put themselves in a bubble so that they feel that protection, but in reality, chaos is still ensuing around them.
It is. It's almost a level of insulation that they're wrapping themselves in. It's a natural protectant. It's an aid because, again, we're making the assumption that if you're putting yourself in that bubble, you don't really feel comfortable in being able to withstand the chaos. So if you could kind of imagine this little contained area, literally a bubble, where chaotic activity, life is constantly surrounding that one small entity, what really is the person learning? What are they really achieving while they are in the safety of the bubble? What are they learning?
They're learning how to protect themselves, how to put up their wall, how to be defensive, how to, again, avoid the situation.
They're learning how not to cope.
Right.
That's what they're learning.
Well, they're learning ineffective ways to cope.
Correct. It's maladaptive, right? Nothing about it is encouraging a natural, successful approximation to the goal. The concept of shaping behavior. We're all getting closer and closer with more and more wins under our belt. But life in the bubble, yeah, it might actually achieve the goal. It's achieving that in basketball. It's achieving that in hockey. They're playing their games. They're starting their playoffs. We hear all the fake fan noise in the background.
Right.
The radio announcers are more animated than ever. You would think every game, even Major League Baseball, is the World Series or the NBA Finals because they're all overcompensating. Why? Because they're in a bubble.
Right.
Because they know it's not reality.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore, the chaos around them continues to drive home the notion, stay safe.
Mm-hmm.
Hashtag stay safe. I had to say that. Sorry.
Right. And
we should scroll that on the bottom there, just in case nobody note that, please.
And just
thank you.
To our point, to this bubble, to this chaos, right? I want to talk a little bit about what chaos is. What does chaos mean? I know we talk about chaos a lot, but I don't know if we always have defined it.
Right.
So I want to kind of go to the mathematical principles as the scientists that we are here.
Okay. For all of those mathematicians out there.
Right. And I'm going to just talk a little bit outside my realm a little bit, but more so what chaos theory is. I'm going to be reading the definition of what that looks like, and we can discuss that.
Okay.
What chaos theory is, and how does that define mental health? How does that affect an ability to perform? Okay?
Yep.
I want us to think about that.
I'm with you. Hit me.
Chaos theory is a branch of mathematics focusing on the study of chaos. States of dynamical systems whose apparently random states of disorder and irregularities are often governed by deterministic laws that are highly sensitive to initial conditions. Chaos theory is an interdisciplinary theory stating that within the apparent randomness of chaotic complex systems, there are underlying patterns, interconnectedness, constant feedback loops, repetition, self-similarity, fractals, and self-organization. It goes on to talk about the butterfly effect, which we can get into as well. But just that one line, right? That's an interdisciplinary theory stating that within apparent randomness of chaotic complex systems, there are underlying patterns, interconnectedness, constant feedback loops, repetition.
So what I draw from that is that randomness in fact determines something much more absolute. So is it in fact what I take from that is chaos is not chaotic at all. What I take from that is chaos is in fact almost a calm sense of order. The more that chaotic things are evolving, there is a symmetry to that. As I said to you early, there is a poetry to that, in which things fall in order. We've seen examples in lab environments, scientific lab experiments that look at gravity. They look at the distribution of balls of the same size, I believe, but on different length ropes. You and I were watching that,
right?
Where they all start chaotically, but the more that they swing, they find this synchronization. And I think that's what I'm taking from what chaos is. Nothing is random. They use the word deterministic. When in fact, if something is deterministic, that means that it's leading to something more specific, something more finite, which really is stating nothing is random.
Yeah, and that nothing is random. If we're thinking about that in terms of performance,
yes.
What do we do to get there? What do we get to? How do we know that things are going to be okay, that things are going to work out, that I can embrace this chaos in this moment? Because doesn't chaos mean that I'm more likely to fail?
I think that's the stereotype, which is why people put themselves in a literal or metaphorical bubble to avoid that chaos, because they identify the bubble with safety. But in fact, I think that's a gross misnomer. I don't think that chaos leads to that. What we say in the lab often is simplistically getting more comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Right.
That's embracing the chaos. It's us simulating the common difficulties that people steer wide and clear from, and to your point earlier, avoid or escape.
Right.
What we want is the third option, which is to face the chaos, embrace the chaos. Because the more that you do that, chaos becomes the norm.
Right, and you get to see the patterns that are within it.
Yes.
You get to see how this outlines, how the distribution of your life can unfold.
Right.
Versus being kind of, the blinders on, right? This is my focus, and you're missing out on the entire world around you. because you're so hyper focused on I need to avoid this, that you're missing out on really enjoying life and connecting with the things that are meaningful and being able to perform.
That's actually a statement that's very consistent with some of the foundational elements of BioQ, because one of the things that we establish through our holistic mental skill metric is what we refer to as an integration effect of a host of systems that are all intercorrelated and together have a more significant impact than the singular focus of each of them.
Right.
But to the point of how details get overlooked when we interpret chaos as a threat, that's a very pronounced attentional shift, where you're going from a broad external view of life to a narrow internal view of life. I call it the chess game moment.
Right.
You play chess?
Yeah, I do.
Do you really?
Uh-huh.
We should play chess sometime.
Okay.
Are you any good?
I'm all right.
Yeah. I'm not very good. Chess is like one of those things that I've convinced myself that is not athletic, which kind of gives me permission not to be good at it.
I actually read recently that in a chess match, right, in a long tournament format, you can burn up to 4,000 calories a day.
Of course you can, right?
Because your mind is using up more than 20% of your energy, your daily usage.
Right.
Right. And so that mental fatigue sets in as well.
Your brain drive is in overload.
Right.
So of course now it's a sport, and in fact that I'm just not athletic in the sport of chess. There, you made me say it. But I played chess with a buddy that we went to Pennington together. He was a pitcher, I was a catcher. We developed a relationship in middle school. We're still lifelong friends. He's now since relocated to New England, started a family. And when we get together less and less, unfortunately, because of the distance, because of our families, we will play chess. And he is better than me, and I know this. But I still have the skewed notion that I can beat him. When in fact, anybody who knows anything about chess, once you get to a higher order of chess, it's just an acquired skill set that you pretty much can turn on, aside from making a significant mistake, anytime you want while you're playing the game, because you simply recognize the ability of your opponent. Long story short, the chess game moment, which is consistent with the attentional shift and the chaos that exists all around us, is when you are moving early in a chess game and you feel confident that you're going to do well, you have a very broad external perspective of your chessboard. You see all the pieces. You're just sitting back and you're elated that the harmony, that everything is just aligned perfectly in the world. But as soon as you realize that when your opponent makes a move that, one, you did not anticipate, but two, suggests that their skill set is much better than yours, your attentional set shifts from broad external to narrow internal. I just need to survive two more minutes so I can walk away with some level of self-respect. And that attentional shift from broad external to narrow internal, that fluidity, that's what separates good from great.
Right.
Now introduce chaos. That interrupts that ability from broad external to narrow internal, even more so.
Right. Can you explain that a little bit further? What that shift means, right? When you introduce chaos and it disrupts, how is it disrupting?
Well, I think it depends on how you operationally define chaos. If we could look at it as because we are a holistic mental skill metric driven organization, if you think about chaos, it's disrupting the holistic pie chart.
Right. And
when that happens, people are confused, they're overwhelmed, they want to escape, they want to shut down, they want to bug the hell out. They don't want any part of it because they're not used to the chaos. They're not familiar with feeling unfamiliar.
So we're pushing against the consensus or the thought process of people thinking that I want to be calm, I want to be relaxed in all situations, I want to avoid chaotic situations, that I feel like I have control, this sense of control, right? Maybe it's not the consensus, but it feels like that's where people's minds typically go, is I want to be in a relaxed state. I want to not be able to be overwhelmed. What we're doing is actually talking about something similar to what is the butterfly effect.
Yes. That's what the term that most people are familiar, or more familiar with, I should say.
When you introduce a change, that change can spread into a large, profound effect, right?
Yes.
So I've right here, the butterfly effect is an underlying principle of chaos. Describes how a small change in one state of a deterministic nonlinear system can
There's that word again.
result in large differences in a later state. A metaphor for this is behavior is that a butterfly flapping in Texas can cause a hurricane in China.
So when you think about that, that deterministic again, is that nothing is random. So when you think about literally the beautiful intricacies of a butterfly's movement captured in super slow-mo, and we can literally slow it down and see the wings move. What chaos theory, i.e. butterfly effect, suggests is that that movement means something, that everything means something. And think of it as a chain of dominoes. And when that first domino falls, when the flap of the wings occur, that's creating turbulence, that's creating a disturbance. And it's going to go somewhere. It's going to impact something.
Right.
And it can travel all the way across the world. And then, of course, when you think about in some of our preparation for this discussion, I looked at how many different instances the concept or the notion of butterfly effect is used in movie titles, TV series, and I stopped my count at 40.
Wow.
So everybody wants to try to explain the butterfly effect, which is really about, some people would look at it as interrupting the time continuum. So if one thing happens today, if I'm moving my cell phone from here to here, and I didn't do that, that's going to lead to someone else picking it up, someone else moving something because of it. It's creating those dominoes.
Right. And I want people to think, right, as they're listening and watching, what's their butterfly effect? And what I mean by that more so is, what's something that they can influence today, tomorrow, right, in performance, in any condition? What's something that they can change or address that's going to make long-lasting changes in their lives, in their moments, right, in their families? What's something that you can do today? Maybe it's embracing a challenge. Maybe it's focusing on yourself. Maybe it's focusing on others. Maybe it's, this is how I normally respond. Let me try to respond differently. It's giving yourself that split second, that momentary delay of how do I want to respond in this moment and where that change can create. And so in the notion of butterfly effect, what if you embrace chaos? What changes could that create for you if you embraced chaos?
I think the short answer is it's unlimited. But I think the fear and the concern that restricts many is that they don't want their multiple choice to be unlimited because that's overwhelming. So I think our goal or our mission, right, is to introduce a level of chaos so that people become more accustomed to that experience.
Right.
So it's kind of removing the teeth from like the viciousness of it.
Right. It's the, I don't know what's going to happen, so I don't want to do that. It's the, I want to do this because I know pretty certainly if I act this way, right, it's going to end up in my favor. It's going to be positive for me. Versus embracing the chaos, recognizing it, and seeing that limitless possibilities that come out of it.
Yeah.
By saying, instead of working to escape things, if you work to embrace things, that means no matter the situation, no matter how complex, or when it is relaxed it's going to be, in either situation, you have that domain of control in some capacity. You are comfortable in that uncomfortable. You are comfortable when it's comfortable, and you're comfortable when it's uncomfortable. You have complete control in that limitless experience now. It says there's a reduction in those limitations. There's a reduction in those barriers that you've put in place for yourself.
Yeah.
when you embrace that chaos series.
You know what I'm sitting here thinking of when you're talking is I think one of the key inhibitors for people to embrace the chaos is rigidity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We become so accustomed. I mentioned earlier, we're rote creatures with a disruption of life that we're all enduring right now. We want to do things the same way.
Mm-hmm.
We want to be comfortable. It's not in our nature to seek out discomfort, let alone stay there.
Yet those are the people who then forge ahead in life.
Those are probably the ones that are the most successful in customizing their craft that we then bear witness to.
Correct. And then we're like, I want to be that person.
I want to be that person. I want to be like Mike. I want
Right.
to do, I'm dating myself. Sorry.
Right.
I need to come up with a more current reference.
Well, everyone wants to be that person, but not everyone wants to put in that work. Everyone wants to have that mindset, but not everyone's really willing to take on a mindset like that.
Is that because they're not built that way, Hunter, or that's because they don't know what they don't know?
I think you may have been predisposed to it, right? Genetically, environmentally, right?
Maybe. What about all those people that aren't genetically predisposed to those environments, that aren't built with that, risk-taking DNA?
Mm-hmm.
Is it something that can be learned?
I think it's always you're always able to learn something. I work with executives doing executive coaching, right? Just along with you as well. And a big part of that is recognizing people's personalities. Now, a lot of the research is saying that personality is relatively fixed, right? Throughout lifespan, your personality tends to be relatively fixed over a lifetime. But bringing awareness to it, right? You may not be the most caring person. You may not be the most outgoing person. You may be the person who, sits in the back of class, right? Just naturally. But we can focus on how to change that, bringing awareness to it. Well, what does the behavior look like? I always say, how would you define confidence? Like, how do you know that somebody's confident? What would you say?
How do I know when someone is confident?
Yeah, how can you tell that somebody's confident?
They are executing whatever skill that is their own in an unwavering manner.
Mm-hmm. It's an observable trait.
Yes.
It's this person is speaking well. This person is making eye contact. They have good posture.
Right.
Right. As we
sorry
check our posture.
Sorry about the mic, by the way.
Right.
Yeah.
It's these observable traits that you have influence on.
Oh God, that's so much better.
These behaviors are something that you can connect with. You can make changes. Even though inside you may be scared, you may be worried, you may be like, I don't know what I'm doing. But you're paying attention to it. You're bringing awareness to it. And so with this, we're talking about, I may not be the most, killer instinct. I might not just have that killer instinct. But what if I work hard every day?
Right. It's not natural.
What if I put in that time? What if I ask my best friend to hold me accountable for those things? What if I put myself in there day in and day out? And I guarantee you will make changes.
You will make changes, but I guess the just to kind of push back on you, just because I'm curious as to what you want to say, totally agree with the direction that you're going. But if it's not innate, and we're making the argument that it can be learned, and society has encouraged that chaos equates to danger, what we're really challenging is a belief set.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So how do you assist with that?
Well, it's the belief that I can't change, the belief that this is who I am. This is the belief that, that person had, that person was born with that type of mindset.
Right.
So that's why they got to that position.
It's putting someone else in one box and making it abundantly clear that you're a different box.
Right. We're gonna call our podcast moving forward the David Goggins relational talks, because really it's, if you look at his mindset, if you look at
6 degrees of David Goggins.
Exactly. There you go. Right. If you look at his mindset, if you look at Kobe Bryant, if you look at MJ, if you look at LeBron, if you look at
Michael Phelps,
right? They are
2 straight years of being in the pool.
Right.
Something pretty.
Even if you look at people outside of that, right? Ruth Bader Ginsburg, right? Who's on the Supreme Court. They put in the work. They put in the time.
Yep.
They were there late. They're the first people in, last people out. They were putting in that work and time. And that results in significant changes, but not everyone's willing to do that. Not everyone's willing to embrace that chaotic moment.
Right.
But when you do, you get to be comfortable in that.
The other thing, too, I think that is noteworthy is when you think about chaos theory and you think about that really nothing is random, trying to just sort of, crystallize it and bone it down to one core concept, that random, not if, but when, leads to determining something else. Think about the military. You think about how they train.
Right.
You think about the notion of chaos, and we've all seen the ads where everyone is running away and the Marines are running towards.
Right.
It's that natural gut instinct to want to avoid, want to escape, that is a very effective machine that we refer to as the nervous system that keeps us alive.
Yeah.
That somehow, some way, to embrace the chaos, again, is pushing back against the natural instinct. In working with an executive, in working with an athlete, how do you hold their hand to help them push back through that instinct?
It's allowing them to push past their limitations, because we talked about limitless, right? When you embrace chaos, it's limitless. So working with an athlete or working with a performer, you have to recognize and you have to instill their strength. You have to recognize what they are good at the same time of developing where they, their areas of weakness, I call them areas of development. Through that process of embracing those moments, right? Through the process of, you talk about hand-holding an athlete, hand-holding a performer, I more so say they have to be willing to embrace that themselves. There has to be this change in mindset before I can really instill this change in ability. It's embracing it, seeing success, acknowledging failure, seeing success, acknowledging failure, right, in the lab that we work with. It's about really pushing them beyond the limitations that they see. It's putting them in a state of where they can succeed, which is a calm state, right? It's their familiar state. But then changing it up a little bit, putting a little pressure on them, and then letting them relax afterwards, and then doing that over and over again. And while increasingly, right, I'm envisioning the bell curve, right, of slowly building them up, and then peak, right? Peak performance, right? Putting them in an ultimate stress situation, then bringing them back down, right? We were recently watching a video talking about, right, what chaos does and how sometimes chaos can naturally find this order in life, right? And it flows in this natural state, and even through randomness, this deterministic or this kind of, as we say, the bell curve can kind of come. I actually want to check out this video real quick of what that looks like.
Yes, I think it's Sir Francis Galton. I think it's the origin of his theory.
I think it's from Action Lab, the YouTube channel, I believe.
Actually, for chaotic systems and random systems, you can still use statistics to predict what you think that will happen on a large, grand scale. Let me show you what I mean. One example of a chaotic system is one like this. So I have some metal beads up here,
what we're looking at
and as
right
they
now
fall down, they hit these little pegs. But when you drop a lot of balls, it becomes easier to predict where the average ball will land. And what's interesting about this is there's no specific thing telling the balls to fall in this order, but when you get a bunch of chaotic...
And if you're just listening on the podcast, right, because we have the YouTube clip that we're playing, it's these micro beads kind of falling down this almost Plinko looking board into these slots. And these slots are tall, and it allows these beads to kind of form a stack. And what we're looking at is as they fall down this Plinko board from a singular funnel in the top center, they funnel down through this Plinko looking board, and they fall in a distribution of small all the way up to the tallest in the middle, all the way back down to small, almost looking like a bell curve, right? Going down, up, down. And it's actually almost a near perfect distribution. And what they're talking about is how this randomness almost forms this deterministic pattern of this bell curve.
Yeah, and he does it twice.
Right.
Right. He does it twice to make the example that much more clear. And obviously being in psychology and statistics, and you think about the bell curve, it's quite remarkable and to the point, because the balls too, just for clarification, are coming out of a cone-shaped funnel at the top I believe it's called the Galton board.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
And that's the creation. And it's random, in fact, is determining something that's more predictable.
Well, it's recognizing, and I like that it's a funnel at the top.
Yeah.
How our view, I like to think metaphors. I'm a big metaphor guy. I'm thinking relation. I think this funnel is kind of sometimes our mindset, where we're funneled into this is going to be chaotic. But when you embrace that chaos, when you see the chaos, when you actually are in the chaos, there's this deterministic, or this more of this flow state that kind of arrives, that you naturally will fall into a place that you feel like you can perform.
Yes, the chaos does encourage a sense of calmness.
Correct.
When you watch all of them fall randomly,
Mm-hmm.
but then they continue to fall in a very specific pattern, and it's replicated.
Yeah. Now being summer, I recently was at a bonfire, and I was, we were making s'mores. We were kind of sitting around, me and my friends, socially distancing, of course.
Of course.
Right. And I was watching this fire, and maybe since I was a kid, I was a little bit of a pyro, right? But really looking at the fire and seeing how these flames are random, right? They're kind of flickering on and off, but there's this majestic dance among the flames, right? Where it's kind of the winds breathing life into it, right? Giving it oxygen as the wood is fueling it, and it's kind of dancing around. And it's this, I'm just going to watch this. I'm going to enjoy it. The heat, right? It's large energy. It's amassing. But it's ultimately this majestic, this very smooth, this very delicate process, right? That's happening in front of you. That yet is still a very complex challenge. And it's about giving yourself to that moment. And if I don't give myself to that moment and kind of embrace what I'm seeing and look at the chaos as for what it is, I'm missing that moment.
I'm gonna like start to cry. I mean, that was. When was this? All over s'mores?
It was recently. I mean,
it all started with a s'more,
right? This past weekend, yeah. I mean, it's really just friends getting together, and a moment to hang out and explore. But my mind is hardwired now to look at things and look for things in life, and then start to embrace the chaos, right? To kind of practice what I preach as well. Right, maybe we'll start throwing sirens in the middle of our head game podcast moving forward, right? Into those moments. And it's how do we embrace these challenges in our lives that make life worth living sometimes, that push us beyond what we thought is possible. You talk about the military. I think about the Navy SEALs training. They push you beyond what you perceive as your limit, because what you perceive as your limit is not your limit.
Right. Well, I think to that very point, the entire focus of the training in the military is to debunk the myth that limits exist. Mm-hmm. So therefore, what we would commonly refer to as a limit is exposed very early, mm-hmm. more often, and then with increasing levels of severity.
Right. It's triggering that fight-flight response and overcoming it. It's the sense of, I think in the military, that's, you think about things in life and death. And maybe it's your public speaking performance. Maybe it's your next game. But that's the only thing you're focusing on. If I don't win this, I'm going to feel negative. It's going to be bad. My life is over, right? Mentality. And that's how we think about things. But ultimately, the majority of time, it's not necessarily always life and death. However, their lives are on the line. When they go out there, when they perform, if you will, as a team, as a unit, as individuals, they have to overcome that fight-flight response, that survival mechanism, embrace it, and be able to make good decisions, be able to, not be impulsive, be able to last long, right?
Not just make good decisions, but, to take it one step further, to engage in high performance.
Right.
Right? It's not just about making good decisions. But to speak to your point, though, Hunter, I don't think that us civilians can even come close to relating to that type of pressure, mm-hmm. that type of chaos that is truly life or death.
Right.
Because I think this sort of goes back to us being rote creatures, us preferring a level of familiar insulation. How we deem our lives is very out of focus as it relates to those people that are putting their life on the line, not just to do a job, but to serve something much greater than themselves.
Right.
And I think that's what allows them to then look at chaos as this is part of the drill, because their belief, their passion, their fortitude, their gumption is of such consistency that it allows them to say, this is now my duty.
Right.
That's something much greater. Imagine what life would be like if we all lived with a military-like duty in how we did our jobs,
Right.
how we form relationships, how we raised our children.
Yeah, it's the commitment to each
It
other.
would redefine chaos.
Yeah, I don't know how many people can say that, the place that you work, the person next to you is your brother or sister. And almost every person in the military sees that, right? This is my brother, this is my sister, right? When you come back from that, you've created a family, you've created a connection. Every workplace has connections, but you create a bond that's stronger than almost family sometimes, because you've had to rely on each other for those life and death situations.
Yeah, your level of reliance, I think, allows you to push through a traditional barrier, which I think in the larger point of our discussion is by enveloping someone with chaos to normalize that chaos can become calm. We are then pushing them through their barriers of perception, their barriers of limitation.
And it's identifying that, again, our butterfly effect, if you will, of identifying and making the change, the subtle change of that chaos is good. Chaos is calm.
Chaos is welcomed.
Chaos opens up the door, right? Not shutting it out. It actually is as you say, you are the gatekeeper, I am the key, right? I'm the holder of the key, right?
Am I the gatekeeper?
I am the holder of the key.
You're the key master.
Yeah.
I'm the gatekeeper.
Yeah.
We'll go with that.
Right. And it's when you unlock that door, right? It's what's behind that. It's the unknown. But embracing that allows you to open up. And in the realm of performance, in the realm of sports, right? Embracing chaos, what does that do? What does that do to performance when you not only embrace it, but train in chaos? What does that do for you when you actually have to perform in a game?
I think it redefines on a host of issues what it is to perform. Because I think, again, with a certain deliberate form of practice, which is another thing that we embody in our holistic approach, to practice with varying levels of focus, of micro goals within the macro goal. I think when you introduce chaos, as it redefines performance, it's allowing the individuals to truly realize that achievement is limitless. And I think because we see so rarely someone do something that we identify as a limitless act, we put it in a separate category. It's again our personal preference for satiety, to stay comfortable.
Well, this is what you're talking about. One of the most, again, NBA kind of is something that where I lean to. Thinking about a player in the NBA who shifted the culture of the NBA is Stephen Curry. He took up the mantle and started just shooting threes. And shooting threes, not just shooting threes, but shooting them in an unbelievable way. Fast release, moving without the ball, shooting from the half-court line and making it consistently. And by doing that, the league has shifted into a more three-point dominant field. The majority of players are aiming to shoot threes, and now 7-footers are practicing shooting threes and have expanded their game. And he is someone who has always embraced chaos throughout his training, right? In a basketball game, you are bouncing and dribbling one basketball. But he practices dribbling 3, dribbling 4, right? Boom, 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 boom. Outside, inside, right? At varying rates. And then he's also calling out numbers. He has these flash goggles. He's balancing on a Bosu ball. He's putting himself in chaos through practice to become comfortable so that in game, dribbling 1 basketball is nothing. It's almost effortless. It's that flow state. I know that I'm more than capable of achieving this goal. And it's only by training in that chaos that you can truly become comfortable on that performance day. Because he's putting himself through the rigors of training in chaos, being in chaos, overloading the senses. And then when it comes time to perform, there's confidence.
A couple of years ago on our radio platform, we highlighted Gino Auriemma. Maybe it was a little sooner than that. And we highlighted a practice segment where he would take his 5 girls and scrimmage 5 men. And after a fair amount of fatigue, he would remove 1 girl and add 1 man. So it went 5-on-5 to 6-on-4. And then he would encourage more fatigue. And then he would remove another girl and add another man. So it went from 5-on-5 to 6-on-4 to 7-on-3 to completely consume his girls with this over-aroused, playing with a deficit handicap.
What does that do to the mind? What does it open up?
So much.
Right.
I think at first, I'm trying to imagine what I would do as a player. Like if the first time that happened on course, I'd be pissed.
Right.
I would, with the Last Dance and Michael Jordan, we've heard we've revisited more stories of him talking about how practice has gotten so out of control, and there were fights with him and Steve Kerr because he had such a high standard. Right. But to go through something like that where it's simply not fair. Think about the judgment. Think about the presence of our own internal angst that would get in the way, that would in fact then impact fine motor skills, coordination, so many elements of our performance that we see as physical deficits all begin between the ears. And clearly, Gino was on to something, because not only was he looking to evoke that response, but he was looking to saturate his girls in that chaos. So now you go back to 5-on-5, and you feel like you got 10 teammates.
Right. And you become comfortable with that because he didn't do it just once.
Right.
He did it over and over again.
That was a big part of their practice regimen.
This is the norm, right? To challenge yourself. Because when you have to then perform, your mind has started to shift in terms of, I can do this. I have more teammates, and it feels like I have more teammates in this moment. You're branching out and widening that perception.
Just imagine the advantage they have the first time that they're really in a tight game, and they start to sense that the other team is fatigued. And 3 of those girls that were playing 7 men during practice 2 days earlier kind of look at each other and say they have no idea what fatigue is really like. They have no idea what it feels like to be at a disadvantage. Right. So again, they're getting slowly but surely reconditioned or counter-conditioned to this notion that their performance has limits. And I think it ties very nicely back into chaos in general. Chaos always encourages that not only is there a limit to your performance, but you need to be leery of the chaos, because if you don't, your performance will suffer. Whereas what we are trying to do is say, no. It's all about the chaos. It's the old Poltergeist movie of going into the light. It's like, no. Don't go into the light. It's like, no. I'm drawn to the light, like your fire.
Yeah. What movie has ever been solved by someone saying, I'm going to just sit back and it's going to solve itself?
Right.
Majority not, right? It's the Avengers going to face Thanos, right?
Yes.
If you will. It's, facing that light, going towards it, right? Chaos is that realm where things can happen. Challenges will come up. You are more likely to fail when you go into chaotic moments. But you're more likely to grow. You're more likely to challenge yourself. You're more likely to succeed. And if you do that throughout your training, right, whether that being prepping for a meeting or for a game, when it comes time to perform, you've become accustomed to it. You're ready to go. You're ready for that, the knuckle curve coming your way. Just a little bit more, right? Yeah. Maybe you don't fully see it, but maybe you make a nice adjustment. Maybe you foul it off, you play one more pitch. It's making those things, becoming accustomed to being in chaos, practicing in chaos, training with chaos, training with challenges in life, pushing yourself, not putting limits on yourself, right? Asking yourself, what if?
I'll take it one step further. I think that chaos encourages strength 2.0. And why I say that is because the natural rhyme and rhythm that people assume that doing something different can build a level of strength that has been reinvented. I think of the story that you told me of the MMA fighters who are essentially breaking their legs on purpose with the microfractures, right, so that their bones come back even stronger. You need to think of mental strength in a 2.0 capacity. That's the holistic measurement that organically is growing with the athlete as they continue to push, to bathe in chaos, to now invite the storm, knowing that they can ride it out. It's a whole nother level of strength because you're doing a method of training that is far beyond the norm.
Right. It's the butterfly effect. If you make one change, this mindset or this recognition that chaos is good, chaos is calm, that I'm calm within chaos, great changes could happen.
Well, I think the notion of having that third eye open of awareness, the attentional shift that I spoke of earlier, now it becomes more fluid because it's more innate, because the changes that are all around us are really what is encouraging the light that it's drawing us in.
Right.
We're now, it's no longer a threat. It goes from intimidation to invitation.
Right. It's the notion of the Sir Roger Bannister 4-minute mile. Nobody's ever broken the 4-minute mile before. It's not possible. Someone can't do it.
It's humanly impossible. It can't be done.
And then someone does it, and then the following year, like 5 people.
And then more dominoes just fall.
Right. And it's just.
Why is that?
Because what's your limit? You have to think about what are people's limits.
Because the mindset.
Why is this impossible?
Has been breached.
Right.
Right? The ceiling was then identified as only glass.
Right.
And you too can break through, my friend.
Yeah.
Good chat.
Good stuff.
You brought your A game today. You can stay.